Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. So I have a legend in the personal injury space here on today's live and an interview. Chris Dreyer is the owner of Rankings.io and also founder, of which is a advertising and marketing agency that specializes in doing and working with clients in the personal injury space. And they do not just PPC or running ads, but they do help them with other channels, offline channels, so on and so forth. And what I wanted to do was, of course, pick Chris's brain here today on 4 individuals in the personal injury space, what is working, what is not working today, and so I could learn, and obviously so you guys could learn as well. Thanks for coming, Chris.
Hey, Corey, thanks for having me. A little too young for legend, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. I get take the successes when you can get them.
Appreciate it.
So anyway, I have a few questions I wanted to ask you here about the personal injury space specifically. I've worked in the space myself. We did a lot of Google advertising in this space, Facebook not so much, and just minimal itself. And what we have, I'm going to talk about also in this interview here today, a little bit later on in the process, as well as my experience also in this space a little bit that I've had on Google. I'll talk about that as well. But with that said, I'm really here to hear from your perspective on how things work. So my first question is, does Facebook really work for personal injury law in your opinion overall? And if it does, what have you seen what works with it?
Yeah, 100% works. I think most marketing works depending upon your strategies and tactics and how you're trying to obtain and convert attention. On the personal injuries, I'm going to speak a lot of my examples on personal injury because that's the majority of my clientele base and the data and experience that I have. On the auto accident side, Facebook advertising is challenging because the cost to acquire is higher, and you get a lot of a mix of leads, no matter how refined your ad copy creative is. Okay, so there's some things that you can do. You can do the Quizlets, right, to filter things out. You need to have a really strong filtering strategy, and you also need to enhance your total addressable market. You need to get certain economics, certain amounts of reach in order to be really effective. And this is pure lead gen, not just the retargeting your existing traffic, right? Which has its own nuances for PI specifically. But that's like on the auto side. If you try to go in with a small budget, small radius, no filtering, going to be very challenging to monetize on a pure lead gen play, not a top of funnel brand play. Other practice areas, property damage, dog bites, nursing home abuse, wildly different economics, not as much competition. So we've seen a lot of success there. But for auto, it's typically the main issue is they're undercapitalized or they're trying to target too small of a TAM.
Okay, and then, as far as what people are doing or what is maybe what you guys are doing, if you would be happy to share. So is it just ad copy that references, hey, have you been in an accident? Inquire with us, or is it more so, see how much money that you can get, or in general, kind of like what's the approach there on the auto accident side?
I mean, people are money motivated and you need to drive urgency, right? So to find out how much your case is worth, the free case review, the settlement calculators, that drives behavior. Of course, each state is a little bit different. In some states, you can be more aggressive with the language than other states. Okay. So it really depends. The same even for the creative that you use. I see some of the lead gen providers, play in the gray area, hold up the big check, and it's, get a check like this, and they're really driving the urgency. But that's most states don't allow that. You got to be really careful. The other thing too is there's this compounding effect that occurs, right? If you got a big TV advertiser that has a very identifiable brand, right? If you've done like an aided or unaided brand study, right? The aided recall study or unaided recall study, and they are known in their location. You can throw up some Facebook ads and be more successful than someone that's not, because they're recognizable in the feed, right? But in general, you've really got to drive action, like, hey, find out how much your case is worth, the settlement calculator, that style.
And it's what is it? Pretty much like the bar that sets the rules as to what you can do on a state-by-state basis.
Mm-hmm. Constantly changing. Yep. Some states are way more stringent, like Texas, for example, Florida, what you can and can't say versus something like Nevada or in Arizona, significantly more white space in terms of the copy that you can use.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you for that. That was quite useful. So my second question is, does YouTube also work for personal injury law? And I know you say everything works if you know how to do it, but what's your personal experience with YouTube ads in this space?
Transparently, we have not found YouTube ads to work from a straight direct response style. I'm sure there's someone out there that knows it. Who's the L Rock guy? It's like YouTube beats Facebook ads every time. I'm sure you've seen that ad. Can't think of his name. But we're mostly just doing it for top of funnel brand awareness. We haven't cracked that code, just being transparent. Like I'll talk about what we see that works, and we haven't seen the YouTube ads work. I'm sure somebody has that, but we haven't.
I know you mentioned something earlier. We were having our earlier discussion about YouTube TV and how that's different. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak on that?
I think like some of the connected TV stuff, the Roku, right? You can get lower CPMs, and on the programmatic side, in that category, which programmatic is such a wide category, really, even Pandora and Spotify and display is technically programmatic, but in that category, YouTube TV seems to be more effective than a lot of other mediums. I would say, when you're doing local spot television, broadcast television advertising, you get the lowest CPMs you're ever going to get. But by and large, you're going to be targeting older individuals or low income, right? So if you're trying to target a different demographic, something like YouTube TV, setting the parameters on, who's going to see the advertisement as a way to get kind of an extension on that audience and it's going to be a higher CPM than it is on TV, and but it's an effective medium, as opposed to, I think some of them, like the quality of the ads on, like a Hulu, for example, they're double viewership, and the CPMs are just wacky. They're so expensive. I mean, they're like 4 and 5 times as much as these other distribution networks. That it's just hard. They're just completely saturated. It's very challenging to have the same impact on those types of channels compared to a Roku or a YouTube TV.
So, sure, that's helpful. So, how do you guys evaluate then the effectiveness of this? Are you using some sort of like conversion lift monitoring, where you're monitoring gross cases or revenue produced when you are doing new channels like this? Or do you look at like number of conversions through your website, how that would increase if you evaluate one network over another itself?
Tracking is very challenging. First touch, last touch, all the dynamic stuff, the journeys. Really, it's a blended scenario. I would even make the argument that a lot of times people will look at, like, say, take Google Ads, and they'll say, oh, my CAC on Google Ads is this. But did someone go there and then leave and then go to the organic? Did it lift your organic visibility? right? Having multiple presence on Google Ads, LSA, Maps, organic, as opposed to pulling Google Ads, like what's the actual, true CAC? So we look at blended. There's other ways to do it. You can do some incremental tests on markets and different DMAs that you're not in if you just want to do a pure one channel method. But I don't know. I've talked to the biggest spenders in advertising in the BI space, and it's like even TV. John Morgan will say, "I'll go in and I'll saturate the market and be the number one or number two in the market, and your cost to acquire a case year one is still going to be $10,000 a case. It's not feasible. Year two, it lowers to 7,500. In year three, you start making the metrics start to work. It's like you have to have time in the market. Then there's also this. Sorry, I'm giving you a super long-winded answer to your question about return. But then there's other components of like systemic marketing and referrals from existing clients, right? The number of clients. So like even if you break even, right, and then one of your past clients refers you to another client, like how do you attribute that, right? Like you wouldn't have had the opportunity had you not had volume of cases and even broke even from one channel or had a CAC that was too high and then got the big case. So it's very challenging is kind of where I'm going, even if you're doing the unbounced landing pages and all of this. But I think you have to look at your total blended cost to acquire versus your value with fallout. Fallout could be as high as 20% or more, depending upon the practice area. So that's another one. Some people will say, our CAC to LTV is this, but are you also calculating the fallouts? Like, a case gets dropped for whatever reason. So that's also that plays into this. But long-winded way, blended is the best approach.
So guys, the key takeaway with all of this is to say, one channel kind of really does support another, and in an indirect way, and then therefore It's hard to tell what is working. And you can't just treat one as an independent, isolated thing individually. And not only that, and I've said it for years already on my channel here, that it takes time to get even new channels working. It's always a process of elimination. You have to always go through. And even with, was it John Morgan of Morgan and Morgan? He said, the longer you're in the market, the lower the case cost is going to get. So, and that's kind of like, how it works in most markets. I mean, the really good return comes in once you have time in market, so that you have developed a brand. When you're at the beginning, it's really tough to get going, but just know, your investment pays off more and more and more the longer you're in it. Not just because you can optimize your ads itself, but now you're just getting the name recognition. And tied in with that, like for instance, when you get a little bit of name recognition and somebody goes to Google you, or Google, personal injury lawyer Tampa, they're more likely to click on your ad at that point in time. So, a TV ad is tied to your PPC indirectly. Mm-hmm. And so I would say certainly I wouldn't be looking at what people have a tendency to do is just look at the bottom of the funnel stuff and only focus there. And then they're kind of like, they're stuck in their revenue because they're not looking outside of this. And really what they should be doing is figuring out how much can they spend. And also, and you even mentioned it before in earlier discussions, how eventually you want top of the funnel stuff. And that with the bottom of the funnel stuff makes everything work together so much better ultimately. So you should broaden your horizons and realize that you look at your blended cost per acquisition, as you say, and judge it kind of all together, knowing that branding is a big part of just getting success in the industry as well.
Couldn't agree more. Well said.
So, yeah, and my other next question was, kind of indirectly related to that, even though we just talked about how one channel affects another, you should be doing as many channels as you can, particularly as people, some people are on TV, some people are not, whatever. But what channels do you typically see bring in the cheapest leads in the PI space? Like, so if you're a new lawyer trying to get into like a solo practice, what would you advise them to get into? Like cheapest cost per lead as well as cheapest cost per opportunity. So quality of lead.
Let me stay with the PI examples, right? If you got a low budget, you got 100% allocation, I would go 50% allocation to buying cases, buying leads. I would do it. And the reason I would do it is because the lead gen providers are playing at different economies. They're typically running Facebook ads for the entire nation, and they get a significantly lower CAC, and they've trained for months on this, and they refine the system. So if you're in a situation where you need money and you're not setting on a bankroll and enough time to build a base, I would first look at that. From there, things like LSA, cheaper leads, if you can get placement. Sometimes it's hard to get placement. You'll have to broaden your categories, be very, not miss any calls, be very active on the messaging. Google Ads, if I had a very low budget, you'd be surprised, but I still think that PMax at a super low budget, just getting out there across, every Google property, you're going to get junk, you're going to get spam, but I think it's a decent investment just to get broad coverage. Cheapest leads, you said, it'd be Facebook right now. Facebook leads, cheapest.
Okay.
You're going to get them all over the place. But if you are willing to monetize some of the cases that other people aren't willing to take, I mean, you could do well there. That would be like my overarching strategy for like a low investment strategy, outside of just belly to belly networking with the bigger volume shops taking their, doing their case second look on turndowns. That's very popular. So, I'm not going to name the firm, but I talked to one of the top 5 biggest firms earlier today, and I was like, well, what do you do for your turndowns? Do you second look them? No, they're just turned down. Like, you could be an attorney and say, send me every case that you turn down, because there will be some cases in there that they're going to be challenging cases, but you can monetize. Work comp, things like that. Yep.
I would say also in addition to that, I bet you not enough firms exchange leads either. So they should be exchanging each other's leads and getting extra cases that way. But
yeah, there's marketplaces, right? Attorney Share. There's, Pilma has a listserv. There's different listservs for like the referral plays too, to kind of go look at the marketplace and grab a case. So those are some of the hustling strategies, the belly to belly stuff. Do you want me to kind of go to like level 2?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just say you got $1 million, right? You got $100,000 a month, 1.2. I would do search, AI search. I would do LSA. I would do some bottom of the funnel Google ads. And then the other investment would be, what are you going to use as your distribution vehicle? Is that going to be Facebook ads? It could be. Is it going to be radio? Is it going to be TV, broadcast television? Or is it going to be grassroots? So I would, and I would still do some of the lead gen, but I would do search, local service ads, Google ads, but then I would say I would pick one to then pile the money in, whether it's TV, Facebook ads, or radio. I would hold on the billboards until later.
Okay, that's an interesting segue there. I'd like to know, so would you say are billboards more effective than TV or vice versa?
They each have their own place. Mark Anajar talks about the holy trinity of advertising and legal being TV, radio, and digital. He doesn't mention billboards. The reason is you can't put a lot of copy or personality on the billboards. Like, people have got creative with it, the upside down billboards and the funny cutesy sayings, but like a rule of thumb is 7 words or less. So like, how much can they get to know about you? You can chain a bunch of billboards in a row. Daryl Isaacs does that very effectively he'll do an auto accident, then a truck accident, then a motorcycle accident, then a safety message. But it's just very challenging because you're just limited to what you can say. Also, in most markets, the more effective placements have already been taken, right? Your right hand reads, you don't want the programmatic boards that are the digital boards that spin. It's just a later play. You definitely don't want to do the remnant boards, the ones that are unsold. There's a reason why they're unsold. I understand that you can get them rotated and they're way cheaper, but it's because they're not good. There's exceptions to all of this, right? There's always that exception, but in general, you don't want remnant boards. That is a supplemental play. If you're doing radio and you have a good investment in radio, do boards. If you're doing TV and you have a good investment, take a percentage of it, do boards. That's just the play.
Going along with that, guys, for you newer guys that are and gals that are starting out, I see that one of the biggest mistakes people make is they skip out on their tracking. You want to, at least when you start spending money day one, get the best tracking that you can. And like even you mentioned PMAX, and yes, you will get a bunch of spam. It could produce okay results, but it's important to set up the right tracking systems up front, and not just tracking whether you get a submission or not, but whether that was a qualified submission. Doing the same thing on Facebook. You had mentioned about having the quizzes, as you had mentioned, adding multiple pre-qualifying questions on your forms, but then in addition to that, doing CRM integration, offline conversion tracking, stuff like this. And to go further, these billboard. So people, you get what you pay for, and this is a complex market where you got people paying attention to which placements are working, which ones are not. And if you're just going to go for whatever produces the cheapest opportunities or the cheapest CPM, you're not going to have the success, I would say, that you likely want. And even on your TV ads, your radio and all that, you can do specific tracking all the way down to the ad level with call tracking, different call tracking numbers for different individual spots that you're running, or at least, if you're running on one TV station, at least run a separate tracking number for every TV station that you're on. And this is ultimately very easy to do if you just look into it. And if you're going to spend the money and not spend a little extra money to do the tracking, you're really, in my opinion, throwing away half of your investment right up front. You want to be in a position, if when you run your ads, you're not quite getting what you want, at least be able to come back and say, okay, well, at least I've got some data here and I can look at what didn't work and make some revisions and find the 20% of it that did, because frankly, at the end of the day, that's what the big boys are doing. They're looking at their data and they're figuring out, they're trying everything, and they're finding the 20% of it that was effective. And that's how they got to be where they're at, because they did that over and over and over again, ultimately over time. So really focus on that as well.
Yeah, you want the data, the pre-selected things for your CRM, but you also want to field Chris Walker style, like, how did you hear about us? Like, have them say it in their own words, right? It could be different than what you see on First or Last Touch. So it's just collecting information to basically give you the most insight to make good decisions.
I agree with that. You really use both data sources, right? You want to see directly what did they do for the last click, if you will, but then in addition, asking and doing surveys in itself, which I will say, a lot of people, when you ask them where they heard from you, they're very vague, but it's still highly useful information.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Well, that was great. Thank you for that. My next question was related to, so we've worked with clients before who were able to do programmatic ads where they would do like geofence campaigns where somebody would target around a helipad, for instance, and for a lawyer that specialized in those big spinal injury cases that are 6 to 7 figures in size and doing that type of thing. I know the privacy laws have changed kind of since
The HIPAA stuff's a joke on the programmatic geofencing. I mean, just extend the fence around a wider radius. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so don't select just the hospital. But yeah, I get you.
Mainly because I'm sure because you could go wider out and you can still make money. I mean, that's the general premise.
Yeah. I mean, certain states have actually came out against it, but it's like, okay, well, do a block by block radius, right? And it's the hospital incorporated into that. And you're not, targeting just the hospital, right? Because you can still do geographic targeting and instead of just fencing just a particular building or helipad. Tow trucks, the collision centers, ERs, trauma hospitals, all those things. Even the billboards, even the zones where the most accidents or the most common accidents occur. Because after they get in an accident, they pull over on the side of the road. They get on their phone to call 911. So scenarios like that too.
Would you also agree that it's kind of waste of time to go after people that are also near your competitors' offices as well?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that play. I have seen some on the Google ad side do these conquesting competitor ad campaigns, but I've also seen, Arizona, data where the biggest advertiser, you're still paying a few $100s a click or more. And then the conversion rate, the click, all the metrics are way worse, right? Versus the individual themselves bidding on their own brand and getting, those sub $100 cost per conversion in the PI space. So I'm not a big fan of those. And I also just think it pisses off everybody, and especially in the legal space.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of the competitor campaigns in general, and to do it right, you kind of also have to say why you're better or different than that person. Otherwise, mostly what you get is people that are accidentally calling you thinking you are the other guy. So,
and then if you don't disclose that, you're in deep, deep trouble. There's some lawsuits. I would look up some lawsuits for Frank Azar. Can't remember the individual that this was earlier this year, maybe at the end of last year. Frank Azar.
Oh, hold up. Your sound is muffled a little bit.
How's that? Am I better? Am I closer? Yeah, I said, the competitor ads in the legal space, I would look at, if you don't disclose and you're bidding on a competitor's name, you get in deep trouble. So one of the things I would recommend people read, Frank Azar's lawsuit, Frank Azar competitor ads lawsuit. You probably find it. Information about that.
Okay. Well, and then, so in general, it's not profitable. I want to add one kind of final anecdote about that, which would be if you did target the competitor keywords, it's not going to be profitable for a while at the very least, and you're going to need good back-end lead tracking to know if the leads you're getting are qualified, because most of them are not going to be qualified because, frankly, half the people don't even read an ad before they click on it on Google. I know that's hard to believe, but, I mean, that's the reality. They assume whatever Google puts in front of them is what they wanted, and they let Google kind of think for them. So what you ultimately have to end up doing is training the algorithm as to which of these people are qualified and sort of optimize it a little bit. But for the most part, and not just in this space, but other local service spaces, it's just generally not profitable. So I will absolutely say that.
Great.
Anyway, my other question I wanted to ask you here today was, what type of cases basically do you advertise for the most for clients? Is it, I mean, in both in terms of volume, but also profitability?
Auto is going to be volume. It's interesting because everybody wants the catastrophic cases, right? And you can sprinkle in. Harlan Schillinger in the space says you get what you ask for, right? So that's why you see Gordon McKernan and Jim Adler and Daryl Isaacs and Azar. They all have billboards that say truck accident ? Because they want semi-accidents. They want the commercial policies, right? The major injuries. So you'll see those. I have heard that if you advertise for truck accidents, they assume that you can do a car or auto case, or just a car accident case. So everybody wants auto, everybody. In some states, premises liability, very, very good. In other states, not so much. Birth injury in certain states is very good. Cerebral palsy cases. In some states, nursing neglect, abuse. It really, really depends. Auto is very, very saturated, but that's where the volume is.
As a follow-up question to that, so what would you say, dollar for dollar, has a better return on investment, going after the regular auto accident cases or the truck accidents?
I don't think that you can, and I did an experiment with a very big firm, one of the biggest firms, top 10 biggest firm in the country. I did an experiment for just a semi-truck campaign, and I don't think it's very hard to target those from a direct response perspective. We did, but we spent way too much to acquire the case. Dollar for dollar, it's such a tricky. I mean, it really just depends. I mean, like, here's the deal. Like, the race to the bottom is pre-litigation currently. If you don't take cases to trial, let's just start there. If you're a historical settlement mill where you're not taking anything to trial and you're not holding the insurance company, you're never going to get those asynchronous cases. You just won't. You have to be willing to take the oddball case where, I talked to this John Wallner from Chicago. We had a guy on top of a factory, falls to the floor, gets his legs cut off, right, amputated. You got to be able to try that. You got to try that case, right? It's not a common. It's a weird case. Like how do you even advertise for that, right? It's like your trust in the market. You got a referral. You get your brand. So you're going to get these big asynchronous cases through volume. It might be year 3 where you finally hit the big case through a referral. Maybe you did a minimum policy auto case and settled and got $4,000 or $8,000 for them. But then they liked working with you and their brother gets hit in a wrongful death and you get that case. So it's very complicated to answer that question. I would say, though, that auto, if you're willing to litigate, that's why everybody's doing it. It's because there's a lot of money in auto.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know some people certainly have just evaluated whether they should go up the chain to the truck accident advertising, like you had mentioned there. That's why I asked that. And, depends on how you handle the cases, and so I appreciate
really
that.
Hard, even on the B2B side, like your Joe Freed, David Craig, Michael Cowan, these guys that specialize in truck accidents. They're even certified trial truck accident attorneys. Like, from a B2B perspective, like advertising to your peers, like there's even a lot of competition to stand out in that space, riding the truck book, speaking at big truck and auto. So it's hard. Okay.
Understood. Okay, Chris. Well, that was actually all of my questions I wanted to ask here on today's interview. So we could pretty much wrap it up with that. I really appreciate you coming on here. This was actually very, very helpful. I got a lot to be able to, tell our clients that we have in the personal injury space about stuff that, like you're doing and stuff that we don't do. I mean, frankly, we're a firm that just does, PPC, and you do everything. And I really appreciate you coming on here and answering the questions that I had and doing the interview. So
my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Corey.
Yeah. Yep. No problem. Nice. It was a good interview, and I'll let you go.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
See ya.